accelerate and then I stop, I want it to slow down on its own. I mean, clearly it hit the ramp there, but if I just give it a little spin there, I want it to slow down. Now, if I had the linear damping as 0, and just checking, I have no linear damping on the tires. And then I reload this and run it. Give a little spin, let go, and it's just not going to slow down until it hits the ramp. No slowing down whatsoever until it hits the ramp. Now there is actually a little bit slowing going on there, but it's kind of goofy looking. Now the reason we're getting some slowing is because the tires have angular damping, which means that they want to stop spinning, and there is friction between the tires and the platform, so that will translate into the platform. In a sense, if the car is moving to the right, the platform friction is pushing on this tire, and the tire wants to slow down, which translates into torque on the axis, and that slows the car down. If I set the angular damping on the tires to 0, and I reran this, give it a little push, it's not going to slow down until it goes up the ramp. In fact, if I had the patience, I could just sit here and it would probably just keep going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and never slow down.
So it's almost like a frictionless.
Yeah, this is a completely frictionless environment now. There's friction, but the friction has no effect. There's no torque, there's no force being applied to the body, so the momentum is retained and it just keeps going back and forth as we see here, which is not what I wanted. What I wanted was my car to behave more naturally. And you can see in the video that it really looks lurchy, but it looks a little bit lurchy in reality too. So that's telling me that the engine's probably having some issues with this and wants a little more reasonable values. So I'm going to go back to having a little damping. I guess in a nutshell, a little bit of damping is always good for a physics body because it makes it behave more naturally, I think. Okay, the other thing is we talked about this. Is sleeping allowed? Is set to false, and the reason I did that is because if I set it to true, and let's take a quick look here. This may still not apply. Yeah, so I set it to true. The body went to sleep. I turned on the gravity. Nothing happened because the physics engine is saying, I'm done. I stopped looking at that 30 seconds ago or half a second ago. So nothing important is going on. Just leave it alone.
Now, if you were to spin a wheel, it would wake up, correct?
Yes, it would wake up. Let's see. Spin a wheel.
Yeah.
The wheel wakes up. The wheel is attached to the body. It falls. But I didn't want that behavior. So don't allow the body to sleep. Now when I turn on my gravity, it falls right away. Okay, so that was our chassis. Just a box, something to mount our tires to. Let's do the left wheel, and then we'll go look at the functions for driving the car, because the right wheel is exactly the opposite, except the other calculation, the other side of the calculation. So what I want to do is I want to place my tires a specific distance from the center of the object to the left or to the right, and a specific distance from the center of the object downward, so that it has this nice alignment with the bottom of the car. And the way I do that is I simply say, get the X position of the chassis, which is the center of the rectangle, and subtract half of the width, and then that'll move it all the way to the edge, left edge, and then I add 15 pixels, or I could add, let's say, 30 pixels, just to see what happens. And that's going to push the tire back more to the right. Then the same thing for the Y position. I get the chassis Y. Again, that's in the center of the vehicle, center of the rectangle. And then I simply subtract, or I add half of the height, and that's going to push it down, so it's going to give it a nice centering exactly at the bottom. But let's just go ahead and for fun, let's push that down an additional 20 pixels. And let's rerun this. So this time we moved it more to the right and more down, so this tire should be somewhere goofy down here. There it is. So we push it more right and more down, and now we've got a drag car. It's awesome. So, very simple placement. And then what I do is I create a new image rect, and I use the Corona logo, which is this image right here. As we see, if we zoom way in, it's nothing more than a circular image, and it's got some transparent segments. And then what I do is I make it 24 pixels wide and 24 pixels tall. I'm going to make that 48 now to start scaling up relative to my car. So I'm making it twice as wide. And then I place it in the wheel X, wheel Y position that I calculated. I add a body to the wheel. I make it very low density, again, because I don't want the mass of the wheel to influence the motion so much. I use my magical filters to say don't touch, do not respond to collisions with the body. I set the friction really high. Now I could have set this friction to 1. We'll do that. And then, this is the critical part. Although the image itself is square, what I want is I want a body that is round. So I set a radius of 12. However, I made it bigger. So the radius now has to be half of the width or height because it's a square. So let's make it 24. And at this point, let me rerun it so you can see what's going to happen. I made the tire bigger. I made the radius greater. And now with our offset, it looks better. Not exactly great. Let's go ahead and I'm going to take this. I really don't like that offset, so I'm going to put that back. So the vertical offset is now going to be aligned with the bottom of the car. Chassis, that is. No linear damping. In other words, the tire, no matter what direction it moves in a straight line, it's not going to slow down on its own. However, I want it to damp when it's rotating. So if I were to give it some angular velocity, I want it to slowly bleed off. So I set the damping to 1. I could have made it more, and I'll show you what happens if we do that.